Shirley here with Jupiter point of Thales, and this is Moon Hour Sol Day, Saturn Day. Moon is in Leo, and Sun is conjoining the midheaven in Cancer. She's separating from a square to Neptune and Saturn, but also from loosely from a sextile to Chiron and Eris in Aries. And I want to. I will take a look at something that um, happened in the Netherlands a while ago, and this is chart of Pim Fortuyn. I'm probably mispronouncing, but whatever. People say, "Oh, you're mispronouncing your own last name," and I mean, of course, there was no housing for me in the Netherlands. Um, so, um, first of all, we have DD rated chart, so I cannot relate to whether it's a day or a night chart. I do suspect it's a night chart. So Pim Fortuyn was a right-wing gay leader in Netherlands who was assassinated in 2002, actually on my birthday. The murder is by gunshot, but like many places that it says so, it's usually Saturn that rules structure and slavery-based society more than Mars. Although Mars rules brotherhood as well. So we have Uranus, Saturn, Jupiter 24, so my midheaven, and an heretic degree Sun in Aquarius in a almost mystic rectangle with Mars. Yes, it's almost mystic rectangle, or pretty much could be considered a mystic rectangle. 22-degree Uranus in Gemini, although it's very well aspected, opposing Jupiter. And this also gives us radical beliefs, an unconventional type of unconventional right wing. And I want to talk about something that came up for me when I thought about the case of Pim Fortuyn and the current trend of traditional family roles. That has a reason to it, because most of the supposed gender affirming operations are forced ritual abuse using genitalia under the guise of gender affirming care. That is the beginning of this episode. Secondly, where is the problem? What is the actual challenge in gay liberation, even in the Netherlands, which was surprising to me, because that's just surprising to me. But why is that challenging to actually have gay liberation, and what's the connection to both cisgender men and women and people with a vagina? Okay, let's just put it that way. So, delving right to it, the the funding for anything, not just governmental, is stemming from the wealth families, and the rituals of the wealth families affect the entirety of society, indigenous and modern and elite as well. The secret societies that are basically funded by the wealth families, and the values and teachings and traditions and the magical or occultistic tradition, that's what they learn in secret societies, occult. But the occultistic traditions of the secret societies are funded by and therefore dictated by the wealth families. When it comes to whatever they try to do, so a big giant trend that has been various centuries old, to be particular, around those teachings and those secret societies has been both about annihilating the identity and the sexual identity of the people in those societies, and it's not just secret societies, just permeating everywhere. If it's gay sex, it's still forced sex. It's not actually sex. Children did not have right to their own, and you see child sexual abuse and things that are way more horrific beyond what one can mention. So the humiliation rituals um, are juxtaposed with feminization, um, and this is pertaining also to the politics, seeing the conquered people as the feminine. Um, yes, we recently there was a big discussion. I cannot talk about it much as Israeli, but there was a big discussion about the photo that came from the IDF in Gaza and whether it was AI or not. Even if that was something that was done AI, it was done to present a certain image that plays to the hearts of those who grew up on feminization as a humiliation ritual. Um, and and that was IDF in red dresses, supposedly dresses of Gazans or so on, basically having some sort of humiliation ritual in public, um, taking on I don't know whatever what it was meant to do, but it was a part of the use of anything feminine as motif in humiliation. Now, when you talk about actual gay sex, actual gay relationships, whether it's women and women or men and women, um, there is no access to the feminine in its unadulterated form. The feminine is always a whore and a saint at the same time. And I'm not even talking about women, I'm talking about men and men relationships in those brotherhoods, in those secret societies. And the feminine itself is in the paradoxical existence where to be is not to be, and thus anything that takes on the form that is even in connotation to the feminine, whether even if you are gay and you're completely, masculine or whatnot, the fact that you take on a feminine, whether as a cisgender woman or as a transgender woman or as a man who just portrays qualities that are attributed to the feminine and are used in feminization, humiliation rituals, that is um, it sparks a conversation, and you know what, finally, so like, hey, I mean, yeah, um, but that is something that challenges not only the world for like vagina people or cisgender women, which are indeed challenged by this, but also to be a gay person, but or to be a man in general, like even cisgender men. It's like, hey, if you think about it's not about the problem with the feminization. Okay, to be a woman, you sometimes need to do the things that that any man has to do, and same with a man. Okay, um, it is that use of the attributes as a humiliation ritual that make the the feminine unadulterated inaccessible to all society. In that construction, which is again funded by the wealth families, children are used as the feminine that you can expand or consolidate the wealth by sacrificing. Um, and when it comes to men, then to be a gay man in the Netherlands, you would need to deport those cults that use feminization as a ritual. Unfortunately, Islam is one of them. Not the only one, I've been the first to say, hey, that thing exists in the Netherlands, in the elite society of Netherlands. It is by the wealth family. It's got nothing to do with one or another religion, but it permeates. Yes, it it does permeate. It's got nothing to do with one or another religion, but it does permeate all of religions. And for that reason, to actually be, you know, gay in the Netherlands, you would need to deport the segments of society, and people try to mark the segments of society. So you think the refugees, or you think the Islam. Um, but first of all, Muhammad is associated with Baphomet, and that touches on the core of society, where people are converted to Satanism before having even the ability to access their own identity, and thus being a gay prime minister, for example, in the Netherlands, or caring for gay rights. And you see even other people that care, were going along the path of Pim Fortuyn. Then Pim Fortuyn would be portrayed as the local Nazi. That's for starters. Um, and so what will happen is that it is because of those feminization rituals of humiliation that those people one by one will be assassinated as they break free from the paradigm of what is antithetical to life. Because to be a happy man, you need to be at peace with what is feminine, what is masculine, um, or whatever you call it. Even if you switch the name, you still have to be at peace with that. Same as to be a happy woman, same as to be a happy gay woman, and same as to be a happy gay man. Um, and so a lot of people try to make it an issue of the inclusivity to gayness, which goes through accepting the feminine. Very few people went through that route. Those that did went farther from the rest, both being more successful at striving for gay marriage, and the feminist revolution basically assisted gays a lot, um, because it is in accepting that which was used as a humiliation ritual. Because what they would say, what are you, a woman? And the next up, what are you, gay? Um, and so um, but nobody addresses the fact that both the gayness and the women was a ritual of humiliation, and until we don't abolish those type of humiliation rituals on a body, mind, heart, and soul, and finances, then we won't have a gay prime minister that stands the test of time. We won't have happy marriage or happy relationships, monogamous or not. We won't have gay liberation, feminist liberation, or any of those liberations. Um, and this is how you see that um, that the policies play along something that looks like a juxtaposition of traditional family values by people's absolutely not absolutely nowhere near. But also, we won't have that happiness of sexual liberation with human trafficking. It's just like that's basis. And you won't have happy entrepreneurship if that entrepreneurship is slavery based. And human trafficking is slavery based. That's the problem with the human trafficking. It's not the woman that I don't know, pleases herself and decides for whatever reason to make an art of that, or the man. It's not about that. It's about the slavery notion. That's the point about the human trafficking. It's not the sex. It's the slavery. It's once yes, no, and maybe not being respected. Because when we think about it, sexual energy, I'm an astrologer, and they asked once in a conference, why are astrologers so sexy? And the reason is very obvious. You usually don't grow to a traditional line of astrologers, hardly ever. And usually nobody tells you, what do you do? What, my son is an engineer. Oh, my daughter is a lawyer, this and that. No, it's like nobody's like, oh, my child is an astrologer. We actually, one of the greatest teachers that we have of the younger generations, my generation, but he did astrology way before me, so I'm relatively new to that. And he said, when they ask me what I do for a living, sometimes I say I'm a cosmology. And so, but this is why, because the Uranus is also the sexual energy liberator, and it is about doing what we came here to do, not what our parents told us. And you ask, what if you have Uranus in the 10th house? Well, I have Uranus in the 10th house. Um, it is what it is, and I said what I said. So it's about rebelling the authority, but in rebelling the father, but also coming from an ancestry of rebellious people. So this is continuing the tradition of revolution, so to speak, and and revolutionizing the lives of people. This is just the 10th house. This is like it's my career. um, and so when it comes to what do we do when we are actually connected to our life energy, that does not work with slavery. And that's the point. Well, so it's not about like, oh, human trafficking over this. Like, the point is not the sex. The point is this is not sex. What's happening there? That's the point. It's not sex. It's not sexy. Everybody mind controlled is not sexy. It's not connection to the authentic self, authentic sexual energy. And no matter what we do, and no matter what how we paint that, we keep losing people the minute that they break through that mirror image of something into something a bit more authentic. Then they begin to be a tremendous life risk, and that is very likely how we lost Fortuyn. And so, but everybody wants to know if everybody's gay. that's what sparks me the most. It's like people do such rituals to out people, but it's like, hey, how about abolishing the ritual where you create a situation in a society where to be is not to be? And we are in the spirit of the times, with Uranus ingressing to Gemini in a fraction of it's less than a month, where those things are reiterated in society. So when it comes to the chart, you see the person was actually very protected, have an almost mystic rectangle and a double bisextile, which would very much protect P. Fortuyn, and even still, Chiron in Scorpio, again the wound around around the issues of Mars, so the issues of to be who you are, sexual transformation. Yes, I don't have ascendant with the DD. I don't have ascendant. The moon, I don't know if it's Moon Aldebaran, but it is somewhere along Gemini or the end of Taurus. Mars Sun opposition, remediated by Jupiter. An heretic degree Aquarius Sun, so a person leader that could be very predictive. Lilith in Aquarius, okay, again, sexual sovereignty regarding gender issues, but also social engineering issues. And Aquarius, yes, it's astrology, but it's also the secret society. That's not secret when Pluto enters Aquarius anymore. Pluto, Saturn, Mars in Leo. Israel has that combination, but it's completely different, completely different chart. Rahu in Venus sign, Rahu in Taurus, Venus in Aries again, conjuncting my Lilith, and conjuncting Aries, I think. So Venus Pluto, good aspect between Venus and Pluto. Venus Aries, the value of being who you are. Okay, Venus is being and value. Aries is the self. When it comes to the non-conventionality, this is definitely something we see with Uranus Jupiter opposition. Uranus Jupiter, actually Israel has Uranus Jupiter opposition, and it was the secular people that won over the land, and that is but they also have Venus Jupiter opposition, Venus Uranus, so there's something unusual about kind of feminist revolution, but to do with the mothers. When it comes to the actual death, Rao 18 degrees can denote at some sort of toxic relations and between the feminine and masculine. Like, this is the core of the core issues. Like, this is exactly what I was talking about. Because 18 degrees, degree of poison is something toxic. Venus sign has to do with relationships. So toxic relations to the Venusian is what killed him, in essence. That is, and it's not because he was toxic to the Venusians. Okay, it's something to do with society in that case that had affected that. So it's not like, oh, he killed himself. No, absolutely not. It's about the both the upbringing, which was toxic relation to the masculine, and then toxic relation to the feminine, coming from that trajectory, and the fact that in his society, or that there was a coming into toxic relationship, or being entrapped in toxic relationships, but this was that toxicity manifested in the fight for the self. Okay, it was something that couldn't actually be curated from the core, because he grew up in society that has toxic relationship to to the feminine, and use it as humiliation rights. Um, and this is both the Ketu and the Rao. Okay, sometimes people die or assassinate because something to do with Ketu. Guns are to do with Ketu here because it's a Mars sign. But you see, that's basically what people call the toxic Mars, the toxic Venus, and it's the fact that those were used as rituals, that and that gave both a place where a person cannot access their true identity, and as they try to, basically, the forms in which are open for them to express both Mars and Venus are toxic, which is, in that case, we saw a person being murdered, and Uranus has to do also, since he was not astrologer, as far as I know, maybe he was. Recently discovered that the Pfizer person was astrologer, which is why he banned astrology during COVID. Okay, people began to lose traction in the algorithm. So this is also, Uranus can be tyrannical in that way, unfortunately. But Uranus 22 very likely was assassinated, and in that case, that has to do with revolutionizing something, or the gender itself. The connotations to, what got him right wing was the fact that if, let's just say that way, if the religion is such that it is oppressive, then people are going to be radically against that religion. Okay, which makes sense. Yes, so Rahu, Venus opposite Neptune, Neptune in Libra. I'm not going to address that Neptune in Libra, definitely not in regarding to the Netherlands. Um, but this was okay. A leader lost, a leader assassinated, and this was in a society that is supposed to be democratic. Yes, I know there's a monarchy in Netherlands, but there's a strong government, and in society is supposed to be democratic. In a nation that's supposed to be about citizen of the world and the right to be who you are. That is a shock to society and a shock to the foundation of uh, of many things. And I think we cannot address any topics that come across the news, okay, both in Netherlands now, also outside of Netherlands. Um, like there's no point. It's not about outing people. It's about tending to those supposedly secret rituals that are no longer secrets, and they're done over real estate. They're done over resources. They're done over banking, and they affect society to the core. And it's not about outing a person because without defunding what kept them supposedly in the closet, if they were indeed in the closet, because in such societies the damage of the rituals is so much so that accessing the self and the sexuality is a process that is way beyond tender. um, and I'm speaking as a person that is that is this. I can say for sure the second frontier when it came to those mind control societies. And I didn't grow up in a cult or anything like that, but definitely that I was somehow the residue of that. Um, and it affects the entirety of society, because this is also the social engineering that permeates the entirety of society. And no, we can't talk about liberation or sexual liberation without talking about will and consent, and without defunding that which is not along the lines of supporting the sovereignty and the yes, no, and maybe of a person, regardless of what sexual situation or preferences they are, which naturally negates pedophilia, because children can't consent in that fashion. Especially not with all the rituals that are done on the psyche of people. Like sexuality is such a deep and intricate topic um, that requires certain amount of maturation, even if there weren't child brides and death cults and planting urges into people to torture and mind control and whatnot. So that is my 2 cents over, Uranus at the last degree of Taurus, which also has to do with revolutionizing relationships, but also revolutionizing land. Um, and it's about to ingress to the sign of trade, children, but also gender as well, to slowly begin to build up to the Uranus sextile Aries, um, which is definitely going to be a wave of LGBTQ liberation. But you see that only happens after labor rights, the women having the right to vote, and so on and so forth, because of the will and consent part, and going to the what is LGBTQ in those societies where feminization is both a required ritual and the humiliation. And gay sex is rape. It's not, so a person cannot even begin to connect and contact, and people are dissociated. Even when they grew up in these cults, people are dissociated from the fact that these things happened. um, and of course the involvement of film, and the fact that it's all on tape, and people are that's used to extort people, um, and build up a certain situation where so many things need to collapse for people to even access their own identity, let alone sexual identity. And Uranus Gemini is going to continue along that path. Um, so this was my 2 cents of looking at the core of, and it's. I've looked at this chart a couple of times, but only this time at this time when Mars is separating from Uranus in Taurus, and Uranus is on the anaretic degree of Taurus. So this would be almost the last times we'll have to look at Uranus in Taurus in the coming 84 years, which is Uranus in Venus sign. And again, the levels of superficiality are going to be quite drastically stripped off this Uranus in meets Sedna and trines Pluto and sextiles Neptune and Saturn. We will not be able to speak about anything on superficial terms. Because that is exactly what's being stripped away. It's the superficiality, and even of Gemini. Okay, Gemini is kind of like a light earth sign, the devil's advocate, and so on and so forth. But it is in that lightness that the superficiality of the discourse is meeting, or the airy, flary, flirty quality of Gemini meets here a liberation tone. And it's going to be, right now it's still Taurus, we're very serious, it's the axis of Scorpio and Taurus, the deep and so on, but on a very airy level, those things that were incredibly deep are going to come into the surface, and Uranus liberates the Gemini from the entire psyche of what was affecting its own duality. Okay, and this is exactly what happened to Pim Fortuyn, because the duality was the Baphometian duality of the juxtapositions, which was unliberated from the oppression of the slavery-based notion, where to be free you had not to be, and to be free you were enslaved to that Baphometian satanistic notion. And that pertained trade, and that was to have a house, and that was to have a job, or to partake in trade. And Uranus works in a very antithetical way, where the framing of the argument, okay, let's say Frau in Gemini at the time of COVID, people argued about misinformation over Pfizer products, which was like one of the least, you know, it's open in a discussion about Viagra that is cult-like sex meet cult-like medicine. But it's also, I said what I said, but also the particular dual framing that was marketed to the people. Uranus is going to liberate that. Uranus is going to liberate that the framing of the Gemini, the framing of the media, the cunningness of the media is going to go through the Uranian phase of, hey, that framing is now going to work. And we literally see, even before Uranus hit the 0-degree Gemini, how Satanism, Baphomet, Islam, death cults, satanic, all these things, even the wealth families and the occult that's reliant on that, these type of gods are kind of like, people have had enough of, it's like, hey, it's kind of like, hey, you promised us freedom, but we feel that you're bringing slavery rather than freedom. And this is where people want to be liberated from Baphomet itself. That is the story of Pluto in Aquarius, but it's also the story of why why we did not have a gay prime minister yet, or a gay president yet, that stood the test of time, because it was not assassinated. Why avoiding nuclear war is risking assassination. Why standing against the unhealthy health organization is liability to assassination, supposedly under the guise of mafia. And yes, and why even right-wing people that began to begin to think about sovereignty, even from within those fraternities, from within those brotherhoods, um, lost their throne, so as the Shinzo Abe case in Japan. So, yeah, Venus is no longer 22ing the nodes. Let's go back a little bit to the nodes, because the nodes are about to exit the 22nd degree as well, and I could not have the nodes leaving the 22nd degree without talking about the assassination of Pim Fortuyn. Fortunately, with Urano Taurus in the anaretic degree of Taurus, I have more access to the depth of what actually caused that, on a societal level, because both an assassination and a suicide are a societal thing. I addressed the Lilach case in that really did not have a place to be, and it was psychiatry that killed her, and she committed suicide at the hospital. The building was bombed, and the feeling of liberation. You think about Uranus as the sexual energy explosion, but also an orgasm, not just shock, trauma, and rape, but also an orgasm of liberation and healthy, happy sexual energy. And that was almost the feeling of the missile hit in the hospital before I knew. And it was 2 meters from me, okay? It was a gigantic bombing. And no, I did not feel that way about other missiles hitting, okay, the other side of town. So we had enough missiles dropping to make a statistical analysis of that, and that liberation, where the entire building in a hospital fell, it was a liberation from the place where that place was not healthy for people to recover their rightful right to be who they are and to live. And in that case, suicide is liberation, but it's a societal murder. And of course, assassination is also a societal murder as well. And only afterwards, after that feeling that I could not resist of liberation, did I find out that indeed no people were harmed in that hospital bombing, unlike other bombings where buildings fell and people inside the safety rooms were killed. In new buildings, okay, other side of town, and people were evacuated ahead of time, and that building went down. That's the building where Lilach jumped to her death from just a couple of months ago. And so the energy was a telltale of how human and almost sacred the entire thing was, of that structure collapsing, just like that lady collapsed into her liberating death because society was murderous. And particularly where she went to heal in the hospital, and that building, that structure, that fungal structure that did not support life but did serve as an anchor to her liberation, collapsed a couple of months after her, with no people harmed in that hospital, which was the biggest hospital in the southern Israel, that people will come from all over in times of emergency. So you think about the fact that to be is not to be, and then the people that came the closest to be, they were either assassinated or committed suicide, which is a societal murder, where the society is such that people cannot be who they are. And you think about sexual violence as an act against the will to live, and act against being. This is why it's performed, to create those mind control things that we now know as MK Ultra. But now the people that are running the place were the children that nobody came to save from that. At the same time, at these times we might also come to the analogy, talking about the elephant in the room, or the pink elephant in the room, that the elephant is no longer in chains, and it is very likely that the elephant is no longer in chains, and the elephant has to learn that and move away from those constrictions. And yes, the Uranus ingress is very likely going to be highly suicidal on many levels. and it's an opening to something where, um, before we talk about, hey, are we not even allowed to know if the person likes men or women? First of all, why should you be allowed to know? Secondly, um, secondly, um, or what is the gender of this person, whatnot, but also create a society where to be is allowed, where you can be who you are, where you actually be, both physically, energetically, spiritually, psychically. That does not work with slavery. That does not work with humiliation rituals. That does not work with cult-like society and cult-like science. Um, and then people can have a discussion, but they first have to be.